I've always been interested in the consumption of sport and physical activity, and particularly in cultures of exclusion. I'm interested in the pervasive inequalities in sport, and particularly action sport, and what we can do to change those.
Some people think that studying sport is a bit trivial because it's something that occupies our leisure time. But in fact, if we think about it, sport matters hugely to millions of people around the world. It also matters because it's a reflection of how we live as a society. So as a sports historian, I'm particularly interested in the way that sports were primarily conceived as something mostly for men. And it was usually men who decided that sports were mostly for men.
The stage was set and the parade began, headed, according to custom, by Greece, the ancient home of the Games.
Sport is actually a fairly modern invention in the way that we understand it today, and most historians trace it back to the late 19th century. Often people look at the history of sport in Britain when they do this, and they look at the connection between sporting practice, and especially team sports like rugby and football, and the military, and the way that team sports were considered to foster certain skills that would be useful in the army. And even if you go beyond Britain, if you look at countries like Germany and France, sports like gymnastics were considered as essential forms of military training. And so therefore they were targeted at boys because at this time only men fought. Now, although there's been a lot of progress since the late 19th century in terms of women's participation in sport, it's been a long and slow struggle for women to even begin to approach taking up sport on equal terms with men. So our project sits within part of that struggle.
So mountain biking is considered to be an action sport like snowboarding and skateboarding and climbing. They're new sports, and they were set up as a sort of subculture where really participants should have been able to feel that they were much more included, and a diverse range of people could have been part of those sports. Now, the promise was there, but in fact, the marketing and media around those sports, like mountain biking, has led to just as much gender hierarchy and masculine dominance as mainstream sports. So 40 years down the line with mountain biking, we're at a place where the dominant cultural ideal in mountain biking is masculinity and high-octane riding, risky riding. And women can struggle to feel part of mountain biking culture. We want to understand how women have navigated those sports cultures and how the marketing and media of mountain biking fosters a culture of exclusion, but also how it can transform that culture. We received a grant from the British Academy to do some qualitative, in-depth research about mountain bike culture.
My part in the British Academy project consisted in me analysing action shots of mountain biking from a range of mountain biking magazines. Although there's been a lot of progress in media representations of mountain biking, there's still this gap between the way that men and women are represented. Men in mountain biking magazines tend to be represented taking greater risks, for example, doing jumps, downhill racing, and so on and so forth, whereas women tend to be represented undertaking more recreational forms of mountain biking at a more leisurely pace, or often pictured in still shots as opposed to action shots.
We did lots of academic research, rigorous ethnographic and semi-structured interviews with a range of women riders who are participating in mountain biking regularly. We also asked women and girls who are on the outside of mountain bike culture, and we built a picture of how mountain biking looks and feels both on the inside and on the outside as a woman. We talk to media, we talk to magazines, we talk to people running brands, manufacturing bikes, we talk to policymakers and the people who are running the trail centres about how mountain biking is governed and who in mountain biking has a voice to tell stories about the sport. We learnt an awful lot about the culture of mountain biking as it is today, but also where the levers for change could be. And that is how we developed the FIERCE framework. FIERCE stands for Fostering Inclusive Action Sport, and the framework is the sum of all of our insights from the research that we've pulled together into a comprehensive framework for social change in mountain bike culture. The FIERCE framework was developed in partnership with our 5 partner organisations: British Cycling, Beiccio Cymru, Forestry England, the International Mountain Bike Association and Developing Mountain Biking in Scotland.
Both the framework and the toolkit from Project Fierce were co-produced with our fantastic steering group of women who all come from a range of different action sports and have vast experience in telling the stories and promoting diversity in those sports.
The purpose of Project Fierce really is to create a mountain bike culture that encompasses and encourages women and allows them to find the space in a way that they want to find it.
The framework has 4 areas. At the heart of the framework is building communities of women in mountain biking. We learned through our research how important women-only communities are. Something magical happens when women come together to ride. They support each other and women progress and learn at a rapid pace when they're not feeling that they are being compared with men who have been riding for a long time. And to support this, the Fierce team has developed a toolkit that is specifically designed to support women-only communities of mountain bikers.
I think women-led communities are so important because ultimately we want them to feel very much embedded into mountain biking culture, but at the moment they need that step to help them get there.
But we can't stop there. We can't stop with the segregated culture in mountain biking. And so the other 3 areas are cultural representation, integration and leadership. Cultural representation refers to the images, the stories, the visual identity of mountain biking that we see in its niche marketing and media.
The media has a big part to play in this, and how we define what mountain biking looks like and the culture of mountain biking.
We have a section on integration into grassroots mountain bike culture. So that is the races, the events, the group rides, the trail building days and experiences.
My daughter and I both have done bits of racing, and when you look at the stats, you're lucky if it's more than 10% at most races being women. What race organisers could do is use the toolkit to bring out some of those issues and look at trying to encourage more women into those spaces.
We also know that women are much less visible in positions of leadership in mountain biking.
If there are not women in leadership positions, then there's no one to look up to role model.
We also need to think about the governance and how women are part of that decision making, because if we have that diversity of thought, then things will change at that organisational level.
We are working particularly closely with Beiccio Cymru, Welsh Cycling, to see how the Fierce framework can shape a national strategy for inclusive mountain biking. We're also working really closely with Forestry England, looking at how the Fierce framework can energise particular activities in the Forest of Dean.
My world is water sports, kite surfing, wakeboarding, surfing, wing foiling and everything in between, and we're already transferring the Fierce framework into the water sports world, and it's really relevant, really easy to transfer and really helping communities already to grow and make an impact on the action sports world.
We decided to launch Project Fierce with a community bike ride supported by Ride Bristol in Ashton Court on the 5th of October.
It really was a celebration of community, of diversity and of transformation in the beautiful sport of mountain biking.
So not only did we have great weather on the day, we were honoured to have our steering group come and join us on our ride, and for Anila McKenna, who is known internationally for her work in diversity and inclusion in cycling, launch the framework and the toolkit on the day itself.
It was fantastic to have Anila talk about Project Fierce and the role it has to play in the future transformation of mountain biking.
You might be wondering why this matters so much to us. Well, we're both very keen cyclists, and we just want to see as many people and as great a diversity of people enjoying the sport as much as we do.